How you doing, John?
Good. How are you?
Not bad. Thanks for joining us again.
Hey, this has gotten interesting beyond just my initial deal.
There's always something going on in planning and zoning.
Yeah, now I know what's going on with the city.
There you go.
All right, everyone, we're live on YouTube.
Perfect. Thanks, Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
Ron, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me or no?
Yep, we got you.
Okay.
Got Teresa.
Hello.
We've got Mary here. We're really just waiting for quorum.
Yeah. What's new?
Anybody say they wouldn't be able to come tonight?
I haven't heard from anyone.
Neither have I. I can start texting if you want.
Personally, I don't think that's a bad idea. Just
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea too.
I'll
get
send one
through what
out.
we need to get through tonight.
All right, we're looking for Ryan and Jesse.
Ryan, Jesse, and Jonathan Merriman. Oh, I got Ryan. He's coming in.
Oh, cool.
Well, at least have quorum, so that's good.
Who's John on here? Isn't that?
That's John Luke.
Oh, hi, John Luke.
Hey, Teresa.
You guys hear me?
Yep, we gotcha.
Deal.
I'll take this weather though. This isn't bad at all.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Well, I do prefer the occasional thunderstorm. I really enjoyed the thunder, the lightning, and the summer downpours, but nothing beats sunny and 70.
You can thank me for the nice weather. I ordered a pool and it arrived just in time for it to get too cold for the pool.
That's fair. Well, John, for my sake personally, you're welcome anytime because I'll take this weather every day of the week. That's fine. Isn't that how it always works, though?
I'll take it. It's a win in my book.
You still got the pool.
I figure theoretically it'll get hot enough eventually.
That's right.
Ryan, have you heard anything from John or Jesse? You're muted.
Really cool.
Sorry, I'm trying to edit out the Disney Channel that's going on behind me, but great babysitter. But yeah, as far as I know, they're supposed to be on today.
All right, well, it's 6:31, so it's up to you if you want to give him a couple minutes or not.
Yep. Is Ron on here?
Ron is on here, yes.
Yeah, I'm on.
John just texted me back and said, yes, he's downloading Zoom.
Oh, okay.
So this is our last online meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Everyone will need to join in person from now on, including the public. The emergency order that the state did for the pandemic is expiring on June 30th. So starting July 1st, all public meetings will need to take place in person again.
Okay.
Will you
So
be able
we'll-
to watch
we'll-
it still?
Yeah, we'll stream to YouTube still. You just won't be able to participate virtually.
So it'll be like how Facebook was originally.
Yeah, you'll be able to watch the meeting on YouTube, but you won't be able to participate.
But any public comment at that point would have to be in person.
All right, so they're just gonna be able to see each
Right.
other through a little window. So we'll see how they react.
I'll tell you what, this thing just changed the view on me. Oh well.
Bailey, just to clarify that, just to make sure that was right, any public comment would have to be done
Hasn't seen
in
it.
person then.
Yeah, the public won't even be able to get on Zoom.
Okay.
And they won't be able, you know, I mean, you know about YouTube. They won't be able to talk on YouTube. They'll just be able to watch.
Will comments be shut off when we do the meetings then, or comments will be kept on? Or?
Well, we don't read any comments on YouTube during the actual meeting.
Yeah.
So those don't count as public comments.
Yeah. All right, that's fair.
Has there been any discussion, or is there a law against the having a virtual component?
Yeah, it's somehow how the Ohio Revised Code is written on how municipalities hold public meetings. The only reason we were allowed to have a virtual format during the pandemic was because of an emergency order issued by the state. And so, you know, they could extend that emergency order, but we haven't heard any. We don't think that they will. We haven't heard anything. So as of right now, it expires on June 30th.
Bailey?
Yeah, from what I understand, I think there are multiple bills, I think, in each chamber that are promoting the permanence of this type of meeting. But what was in, I think there was a provision in the budget bill that's being negotiated that was taken out most recently by the Senate, if I'm not mistaken. So at this point, it just reverts it back to the original ORC guidelines, which is in person. But there are other bills out there, so who knows? It could be permanent at some point.
Hopefully it is. I think we get better public participation when we do.
I would agree. But is the right place to have that within a budget bill, or is it the place to have that as a standalone item?
Yeah, budget bill seems weird.
Oh, they throw all kinds of stuff in any bill they can.
It probably would have been taken out in the final version anyway.
To keep it trucking, every morning work starts well
Say hi.
before guests arrive.
This is your one and done. You can say hi. Say hi, everybody. All right, go back.
John is having trouble. He said the join meeting will not load, and he's tried to go to zoom.us and join with the ID and passcode. He said nothing's working.
Huh.
I
He
had to
did
download
call in.
GoToMeeting, not Zoom, for mine to work.
Wait, you joined via GoToMeeting?
Yeah, I don't even have Zoom on this computer.
Huh.
Oh, now he says his internet is out.
Okay.
I'll just fill in for him. We're basically the same person, right?
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started then.
I
I'm
don't,
not sure about Jesse. Have you heard from Jesse?
No.
he's not texted me back. I asked John if he can call in.
All right, so this is gonna be an interesting one. So if I click off, my my other half will be here probably about a half hour. So if I click off on mute, you know why. So we'll go ahead and call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission for June 22nd. Here we go. We never did get all the quirks worked out. There it is. So we'll go ahead and call to order the June 22nd, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We'll go ahead with our roll call.
Chairman Ryan Green,
Here.
Ron Dane,
Here.
Jesse Koppel, Ben Lee,
Here.
John Merriman. Nope. He did add that he can't call in either because his phone's on 2%.
He might still be at work. I know he was at work earlier.
He's trying, he's just not being successful here.
All right. So we're on Article 24.
Want to do public comment?
Yep, we'll go ahead and go for that first.
For the executive creative designer of the art.
John or Mary, do you have that?
Yeah, Bailey, I actually just had a question. It's not relating to Articles 24 or 28, but it is about the ordinance draft. I noticed that some of the items say that we have to put it in the newspaper for 10 days or the website, and some say and the website, and some don't include the website at all. I guess I would really like to see that say and the website for all of those items. And the way that it's worded, it doesn't necessarily say 10 days in advance on the website. It just kind of implies that it's a newspaper only. So getting those all aligned, I think I'd like to see, because I haven't bought a newspaper in 10 years.
That's something that we've talked about through the whole process on a couple different things. That's something.
Yeah,
that
that's
always
a good
comes up
call
for us.
out, and that's my mistake. So thanks for letting me know about that. Now I'll make sure I go in and change that.
I think
That
typically,
comes up as we go through a lot of these documents. That comes up, and we've talked about different approaches, getting away from newspaper a little bit and more social media, more website type.
and before we've tried to align on making it an or and not necessarily an and, because the newspaper piece can be expensive, especially when we don't have one that's local. When we had one that's local, it was a little bit different because it wasn't as expensive. Otherwise, the next step up is the Advocate, which can get fairly expensive, especially if it's not being utilized by a portion of the population here in the village. So when we talk about public notice, it's usually an or type of conversation between the website or the newspaper.
I actually had a conversation with our law director about that recently, because we were going to try to get away from that. I'm going to have to look back at the email. But yeah, good call out.
All right. Do we have any other public comment?
Yeah, this is Mary, and I just have a question for the commission. I'm a homeowner over in Leafy Dell. So I just wanted to see if there's been any action, any submission of anything by Coughlin or someone related to them regarding the apartment complex development.
No, there has not.
Well, no news is good news then.
Exactly. But if we do get anything, obviously we will make that public. And I know you guys have been on top of this over there, so I'm sure you'll know about it.
All right, that's the only question I had.
All right. Thank you. All right. Is there any other public comment out there?
It looks like
And-
John and Mary are the only two members of the public online.
All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to our work session on the zoning code ordinance for Article 24. I know in this, I know so the limited industrial district, how much different is that going to be for light manufacturing? It seems like these two are more just kind of a catch-all for what's left out of the rest.
Yeah, so I wanted to remind you guys that last time we talked about this chapter, we talked about splitting limited industrial and general employment. But when I ran through and actually started separating them into two separate chapters, I didn't think it was going to work because it was going to be very repetitive. Some things that are permitted in limited industrial are conditional in general employment, and some things that are permitted in general employment are conditional in limited industrial. So I really thought that I was going to be repeating myself a lot. So I decided it would just be best to leave them in the same chapter. And then if you read through, I added some conditional stuff that we currently have in our light manufacturing that was not included in this new chapter. And then Ben also brought up some other stuff that is included in our light manufacturing that's not included in this chapter that I will add. Ben can run through those when he's ready. But if you read through these categories, they really do a pretty good job of covering what we already have permitted in our light manufacturing, but they make it a little less specific. So we don't have to go through, every manufacturing company that wants to come in and their products, which is sort of what our light manufacturing does now.
Okay. I'll let Ben or Ron, if you have anything on this, I'll let you go ahead first. I just have couple small things.
Ron, I've got a list, so if you want to go, I'll defer to you if you have anything.
I just have a couple of tiny things. In 2403 activity categories for industrial districts, I can't remember where I saw it, but it says emphasis not necessarily on retail type situations. But then some of the examples we give are more retail oriented. Trying to find out where my note is.
Is it in A? Industrial
I think it's in,
sales?
I think it's in B under industrial service. There's like laundry and dry cleaning. I can see carpet cleaning. I guess it's under B under examples. Some of the ones like plumbing and HVAC contractors I can see because they work off site, but stuff like laundry and dry cleaning where it is more retail oriented. I guess I don't have a problem with it, but are we are we saying two different things if we're saying it's not supposed to be retail, but then some of the items are retail?
Well, I know what I was going to say kind of falls into that same spot. I do know with dry cleaning, especially with the rugs, you see like with like Martin and Columbus and a couple other ones, the Buckeye linens, some things like that. That's going to be a massive dry cleaning operation. But I do know when you're selling property and they ask about land or other things like that, when you get into commercial stuff, they're going to ask, what types of business were there.
Yeah.
And dry cleaning and printing and medical waste get lumped in with landfills and a couple of the other, asbestos, lead type things that you would normally think of. Those types of business are also included in those, that kind of waste. And I guess when you think of most dry cleaning, you're thinking of just shirts and it's in Kroger and it's not a big deal. But I think some of those larger sites come into play there. They do talk about waste from printing, dry cleaning, and medical waste. So I think those might be better served in a different area, with a little bit more of an industrial footprint where waste might come up or that sort of thing, or at least make those a conditional use. So that's on the radar, the type of waste they have.
And my wife reminded me, some of the dry cleaning services, it's a storefront, but they actually ship them out to more of a regional area to do the bigger jobs. So I guess I'm okay with it. It's sort of, it could be a retail, but chances are in this situation, this zoning, it would probably be appropriate there.
I just want to let you guys know that John Merriman is on now.
Hey, John, wherever you're at looks cool.
And then the only other one I really had was at the very end of 2303 under, let's see, page 74, about in the middle there. I do two different screens here. Under 230303 other uses, we've got that oddball comment about that we dealt with a couple of months ago about the boundary area northeast of Pratt Street and Front Street. Is that something, since we're cleaning this up, can we just wipe that out, or is that in the codified ordinances?
I mean, that's in the ordinances right now, but these will be the new codified ordinances, so you can change them or not permit them at all. It's up to you.
My vote is it's so site specific. I just from my chair, I would say let's just get rid of it because it was
Not
used.
permit-
Yeah,
Not
it was
permit
used
them
in-
at all.
Or just take off the specifics of that exact site. We can just say units conditionally approved, if approved by the board and council.
Well, we don't have to say that. I already listed them as conditional up in the list, so yeah, they're listed as conditional here.
Okay. Yeah, if we're cleaning this up, let's just get rid of that altogether to avoid, if the board agrees.
I'm good with it.
Now, I thought about this too, and I made a comment about that. I'm glad you brought it up, Ron. The difficulty with me in getting rid of it is that as things stand right now, you've got a pretty good chunk of that light manufacturing area that translates to this limited industrial district that is residential at the moment. And if we just get rid of that and leave it carte blanche, then I think you could see some of these commercial storage units popping up in between residential areas. And in my mind, and looking at it, I think it's odd and it's difficult, but the natural boundary is Track Street, and having it anything on the other side of Track Street, or that line of Track Street going northeast, essentially in the area that is, as one would commonly subscribe a manufacturing industrial area to be, with, you know, all those buildings that are back there off of Commerce. That to me, even though it's maybe a little arbitrary, what I wrote down is Track Street to Pratt Street, Yardner to Coshocton, East Jersey to the trailhead, and anything northeast of that would make sense. But Track Street is kind of your boundary. Because I think there's an application. I think there's a need if somebody were to want to put in storage units. I just wouldn't want to see storage units go in off of Casson.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of a current residential area. Even though right now it's zoned light manufacturing, there isn't anything there. But I wouldn't want something like that to maybe start the ball, if that makes sense.
I agree with that.
We wouldn't necessarily want storage units in the Commerce Center. We want that to more be, you know, businesses that employ people.
Right. So I think it's fine being conditional, because I think there are certain items that we can bring up relative to its location and proximity and the intensity of the use and things like that. But for me, I had, like I said, Track Street, and I'm just looking at the zoning map now. Track Street to Pratt, and then Pratt is that boundary. Pratt up to Yardner, and then Yardner is that boundary to Coshocton. And then on the other side, going south, Track Street to
Wait,
Jersey.
can you start at the beginning? The boundary area between Track Street and Pratt Street.
Yeah, the entirety of Track Street, with it bookended with Pratt and East Jersey. Does this make sense to everybody?
Okay.
And then using Pratt as that boundary up to Yardner to Coshocton.
Is Yardner Street?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it is.
And then on the other side,
It is. I'm looking at it now on the map.
on the other side, I had East Jersey as the boundary up to the trailhead. Anything northeast of that area would make sense for commercial storage, commercial public storage.
I don't know if you want to go as far south as Jersey, though. If we have the trailhead over there and we're trying to make a nicer area, I don't know if you want to stop at College on the south side of that.
Well, I mean, you've got the mill there. I don't think anybody's.
Yeah,
gonna-
that big piece of land where the mill is.
I don't think anybody's going to sell the mill to a storage place. Maybe they will. I don't know.
Hey, after seeing what Newark did with their downtown area, I was thinking all about that whole street today. I almost sent you guys a text about it.
Yeah.
They took an old industrial site, and it's pretty cool what they have over there now.
So Bailey, this was just the thought. I know you typed it out here. If you look at the map and kind of look at that boundary as if there's another way to define it that makes more sense, maybe there's another way.
I might just reword it a little because it's a little confusing right now, but I understand what the area you're talking about, and I agree with you.
Everybody else on the same page? I would hate to open it up to everything. I still think there's a need for some kind of boundary.
I'm fine with it. I just don't know if I want to go as far south as Jersey. As long as it's on the north side of Jersey, I guess that wouldn't be that bad. And I mean, you never know who's going to sell what property for what, but
It would be on the north side of Jersey. Jersey is that boundary.
yeah, I mean, I know that I just would hate to see all the money and time we put into the trailhead. You come out of the trailhead, bam, storage places. I would hope it would be something cooler than that.
Well, to that end, I tell you that we have these set up as conditional. So if
Yeah.
for sake of argument that they are, set up and somebody wants to sell the mill and put in storage units, then a condition of that would be setback, landscaping, beautification to preserve, what you see coming in from the trailhead.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening, but I think that's a big proponent of keeping it a condition.
As the land prices go up, and I mean, a lot of those houses are turning over and getting flipped and things like that. So, I mean, the values are going to keep going up over there. Eventually, something will happen with that mill, I would hope. Because I don't think, do they use it for storage currently?
Yeah. There are still folks that drive agriculture in the silos there. It's still used in some respect, but not as much as in the days of yore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's not a train track running through there anymore, so no, they're not going to use it as much, but that's a better use than what could go there.
Even 15, 20 years ago I remember going down there buying, you buy dog food, you could order shoes, a ton of stuff you could do down there in that place, but yeah.
Get down there and get my Nikes. That'd be cool.
Steel-toed
right.
boots is what they would sell.
Oh, they weren't. I couldn't go down there and get some Chucks.
I don't think so. No.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, as long as it's on the north side of Jersey, I can live with it. We'll see. And it's conditional, so we'll see what happens with it.
Review. And then the only other call out I had was on 240407 under height. No building should exceed 45 feet. Do we want to add the language excluding silos or chimneys?
I don't know if we do.
You think?
No, because that's already taller than the downtown skyline. So I don't know that you want it to become a focal point if it's that close.
That's true.
I think we have something in the other parts of the ordinances about exceeding a certain height limit. And the biggest reason this is in there is for the fire department access. So if you go higher than the ladder, that's a problem. I would hate to see it be, just open to whatever, but be higher than the ladder. I think we added in a provision or some kind of wording relative to fire department approval.
We did.
We just add that into this piece as well.
If you'll remember, you guys had a variance request a couple months ago for silos, and Jim and I did check with the fire department before sending it on to planning and zoning. So I don't know if you would still want it to be a variance, that way you can just ensure that somebody is checking with the fire department and all safety codes are being met.
That's a good point. We can leave it out and then we at least have to get to review it, or at least the fire department does. So yeah, I would,
Unless otherwise approved by the fire department?
Yep. I know our heights in other places were what, like 33 feet, something like that.
5, I think.
35. Yep. 30 something.
40, I think, is the currently what's in there for light manufacturing,
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, as long as they can reach it, as long as the fire department can reach it and it's not going to affect what skyline we have. I mean, you don't want it to be, it's not like we have skyscrapers to think about here, but you don't want that to be what everybody sees when they drive into Johnstown.
Cupola should be the tallest point.
Right.
So do you want to drop it to 40 feet?
I'd say drop it to 40 feet and add on comma unless otherwise approved by the fire department.
yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's all I had in 24.
So I know you have a list, Ben, going back to 73 for me, where it talks about the examples in accessory. So you have accessory activities and industrial service there. And then underneath it, you have examples. So that printing, dry cleaning, medical waste. Do we want to make sure that it goes into a more industrial section than that? I don't know if that's appropriate for what's over there, because I know that potentially you have other types of just general offices and smaller services. And then right next to that, you could have something that the EPA does classify as a waste issue.
Well, industrial service is only conditional in general employment. Are you talking about where our light manufacturing is now?
So I was going down through there. Yeah, so industrial, I guess that would be industrial product sales. I guess that's where I read that under. And then it goes to examples. Printing, dry cleaning, talks about medical waste.
No, that's industrial service.
Is there somewhere that's better classified though? I'm just thinking of the businesses that are going to be around it potentially.
I'm not seeing where you're seeing those examples with the printing and.
Right there, about midway on 73.
I see. Printing, publishing, where do you see the medical waste though? I don't see.
So it talks about medical research and testing facilities.
Yeah.
So you would have to have some sort of waste if they're doing medical research and testing.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's hazardous. It's a pretty broad term though.
Yeah. If it's
a possibility.
conditional use, I mean, that's fine. Because that'll be a question we ask at that point in time. What are you doing in there?
Yeah.
And if they say they're testing makeup, we're probably all right. If they're testing coronavirus, it's probably a no.
I just don't know if there'd be another zoning category that's probably about the only place that we could put it.
Right. And it is an industrial use. I'm just trying to think of the other businesses that could be right there, because when we look at it, you also have, potentially you have office buildings that are over there. You could just have a contractor working out of there, not doing anything really advanced, and then all of a sudden you have to worry about waste pickup. And that goes along the lines with what we were just talking about, the dumpster service over there. That was one of the major sticking points that I had, is that there was going to be waste on that site that they didn't really have a way to mitigate.
I don't know. I mean, if it's behind closed doors, I'm not sure. I don't.
I just wanted to make sure it was something that we were thinking about.
You know, the waste that would come from something like that, I would think being conditional, we could always look at having the waste, and I'm sure there are regulations that maybe we don't know about, but we can always, you know, consider or think about having a condition be the waste be enclosed inside the building itself in some way, shape, or form. So it's not on the exterior, but you have to access it inside in some way. I don't know. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, as long as it's something that we're thinking about in buildings that are around it and the businesses that are around it.
Yeah.
If it is conditional use, it'll definitely be talked about when they go in, but those aren't necessarily businesses that you would think of right away. Hey, the EPA classifies these waste products right there next to landfills and things like that.
Yeah.
I was surprised, but it is. I mean, I've sold some commercial property recently, and those were right there on the questionnaire as a disqualifier for a loan.
You know, to that end, what I had a note down here of doing is I had pharmaceutical and lab services as a separate breakout. I had it permitted in light industrial or limited industrial and conditional and general employment. However, pharmaceuticals are listed under conditional in light manufacturing now. So maybe we need to break that out and change that. Does that make sense, Bailey? So I think it would still fall under industrial. You would just have a separate category for pharmaceutical and lab services that might follow some of the similar.
We could just
examples.
make all industrial service conditional.
Plumbing, heating, or electrical contractors, is that, I don't know, is that?
That's something totally different about, you know, if you're a heating and cooling, the only hazardous thing you have is like your Freon. And if you're going to be, I did see salvage was in here somewhere. If you're working with old heating and cooling units, there's probably some lead solder and
We
lead
could
solder and a little
take-
asbestos somewhere.
We could take medical research and testing facilities and pharmaceutical and lab and put them in their own medical section and make that conditional.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Good idea.
That follows more in line with what we have currently.
Anything where you're talking about chemicals or something like that, it's all about what chemical it is and how they're going, and mostly for me, how they're going to dispose of it and make sure that it doesn't affect the area around it.
Okay.
Do storage and salvage go together?
I mean, if you're salvaging, I'm not a fan of salvaging depending on how they're doing it. I mean, the scale, because a salvage yard, you know, like a scrap yard or something like that, all of a sudden you're talking about a different animal. But if you're just talking about you're bringing heating and cooling units back and then they go to the scrap yard somewhere else and there's only a dozen of them sitting there, that's not that bad. But
Okay. Do you have anything else, Ryan?
I had, let's see, under vehicle service, 240302. It's right there at the end of that above 24. 24.04. Talks about vehicle services, and it would seem, I mean, it fits gas stations in there. I knew we took gas stations out of other places and made them conditional. Are they conditional here as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're conditional in both areas.
Yep. As long as they stay conditional, I'm good with it. The salvage thing was the other point I did have, though. I'd hate to see a salvage yard, a scrap yard go in somewhere.
Do you want me to take salvage out?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Just take it out.
Especially when it's conjoined with storage, because then you're almost inviting that to happen.
Yeah, let's take it out then.
Yep, that's all I had.
For me, looking at the first page, manufacturing and production, down under 24.02. I thought it would be good to have manufacturing and production permitted in general employment rather than conditional. I don't know if you're going to get an entire office park down there in that space or anything like that, but manufacturing, I think, was the original intent for that area down there for the Enterprise Center. Not that we wouldn't take office or headquarters or anything like that, but I think the point was for the Enterprise Center to be a jobs centric type of location, as in manufacturing.
I think ultimately the market will probably decide whatever goes in. And we're not saying that it can't go in. It's just conditional, because I think, it'll probably depend more on what goes in there first or what goes in there more. But if you have call centers and things like that and office buildings that end up in there, and then all of a sudden they want to go do some sort of manufacturing that makes a noise or, emits something else that might not be the best, that might, it might detract from the area.
Well, we've got ordinances in place that deal with noxious odors, sound ordinances, and things of that nature to address these types of things specifically.
And it
I think it should
depends
be
on,
permitted too. That's what we've actively been going after and advertising this land for. So since we already, and that's what the Port Authority has been actively advertising this land for too. So since we already have the feelers out there for this type of use, we should probably leave it permitted.
so if they're I guess if they're actively marketing it that way, I would just hate to see, if we have a nice office complex, kind of like New Albany has on 161 there, and then all of a sudden manufacturing wants to go in and it's something completely outside of the general area, something that just doesn't conform over there all of a sudden. That would be odd. I think conditional would be better, because you're not saying they can't go over there. You're just saying something that doesn't fit the area can't go over there.
Well, I'd say too, you've got certificate of appropriateness. You've got a variety of checkpoints along the way to ensure that there's conformity with that space and what's already in place. So as long as it's contained within the four walls and it isn't affecting those folks on the outside, I would think it would be fine. My concern, though, is that we'd be talking out of both sides of our mouth if we make it conditional here, but we're trying to sell it.
Yeah. If we're trying to sell it that way, for sure. It would just be odd if you get a nice corporate headquarters for somebody over there and they're bringing clients in and out, and then all of a sudden you have, rolled steel over there on a different property, or, trucks going in
We'll
and
have
out.
to match the general character of the area.
Right.
Retail products, sales and service, I thought would be beneficial to have as let me find it here. conditional and limited industrial.
Instead of not allowed, yeah. I think that would be a good conditional. Just thinking this through, I think the light industrial, Bailey, correct me if I'm wrong, but the light industrial is one of the areas where adult-oriented stuff is allowed. And I know we have to put it somewhere by code. I think we stuck it in there.
Yeah,
It
that's a
wouldn't-
separate chapter though.
Yeah. I guess I would agree with that. Retail products and sales could be conditional instead of not allowed.
So the big conversation at that point has to do with traffic, has to do with intensity of use, location, and things like that. But
And hopefully they wouldn't put a Subway in there or a CVS.
Well, it might be something like a White Cap or something like that. Granger.
Yeah.
That would go over there. Something that stores, has a warehouse-ish setting, but they also sell out the front of it.
Yeah, if you go off Roberts Road, there's a bunch of like Stone Marts over there, some other stuff like that. So it's a warehouse just full of granite slabs, but you buy them out of there.
Or like Decocrete, something like that.
let's see here. It's page 72. Where we're talking about food, where we're talking about food products. Maybe it's under C, manufacturing goods. In our current code in light manufacturing under conditional, we have food products listed. And I didn't see it necessarily called out in here. Maybe it's just under manufacturing and production and that piece of it, because we have exceptions, but we don't have any examples in this section either. So maybe it'd be beneficial under manufacturing and production to add in some examples, and maybe we just add, we mention food products potentially, unless I'm missing where food products are listed.
No, they're not listed.
Yeah. So that might be one to explicitly list.
Well, manufacturing and production. Okay, yeah, that doesn't have any examples.
It's goods.
I think at the very least under C, we need to add in examples and then maybe specifically list food products somewhere in there as well.
Okay.
I was muted. That section of the code was 1159.04E, if you wanted to list that, just for reference. We already talked about pharma and lab services. Page 73, looking under warehouse and distribution examples. Maybe it's not page 73. Wherever we have warehouse and distribution listed.
Yeah, it's 73.
Okay. I would take out truck terminals unless we did already. I wouldn't think we want that type of intensity of use. unless you guys disagree.
Nope, I'm fine with it. I mean, obviously, if you're going to be bringing in your goods and things like that, you're going to have some sort of fleet. But I agree, I don't want excessive truck traffic.
I don't know if you want a transfer terminal or something like that back there, especially considering if you're looking at, I mean, both areas back up to agricultural, and it's not like we're, in a downtown space. I'm not sure if it's exactly appropriate to have something like that.
Right.
Uh,
We don't really have a spur there off of a highway either that, is already going to be congested.
Right. Moving on to the next page under personal services. And you guys tell me what you think. I don't know about libraries and museums back here in this space. They'd be more in an institutional, I think is the zoning code that we have or something like that, or special use.
Yeah, I think special use.
Because I don't know if you'd want libraries or museum. Just my thought, seems a little out of place.
I think most of that, I mean, when we're sitting here talking industrial, I think most of that's out of place. But
What about general employment though?
yeah,
Would you want any of that stuff in general employment?
it works there a little bit better. I mean, obviously, if you're going to have an ice rink or like a gym, I know those end up in warehouses a lot of the time just because of huge area.
Right now, personal service is conditional for limited industrial and permitted in general employment. So does that change?
Maybe it does make sense keeping it there. Thinking about, you just said something, Ryan, about ice rinks going in, to warehousing.
Yeah, I mean, there's only, you have a huge building, put an ice rink in it, or a gym,
Well, what are some of the larger museums that you've got, car museums and, airplane museums are in large warehouses that need a lot of acreage. So
a motorcycle museum in Pickerington, I think, is in a warehouse.
yeah, I had a narrow vision, but I think that makes sense. And libraries can be pretty broad too, when you talk about what libraries represent. So yeah, maybe we keep it. I think that's fine. I wasn't thinking about that.
Would you rather they be not permitted at all in limited industrial, or is conditional okay?
I'd say conditional is probably fine.
Yeah.
Because maybe it just makes sense as to where it's located. If it's closer to the road, maybe that makes sense. If it's a repurposed warehouse or something.
I think conditional's okay.
Further back, maybe it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because then you've got commercial traffic mixing with, small vehicles and things like that. So yeah, I think there's a condition you could apply to that.
Okay.
And talking about libraries, off of Taylor Road there, Taylor and 16 in Pataskala, they have a library kiosk that's over there.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Which is odd, but I think it's pretty cool.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Used it before.
Have you?
Yeah, pretty neat kind of idea.
Yeah.
Right there, the campus there, like a COTC is right there. COTC extension.
Yeah. Which that building's been a lot of things. It was a Grand Host East. It's been, banquet center. It's been all kinds of things.
Let's see here, page 75. We're going into the lot and area requirements. Maybe it's page 76. Under trash and garbage control, do we want to maybe cross-reference another section with respect to screening and things like that? Or is it going to be apparent that those additional measures are going to need to be taken just from this one line?
We can. I mean, it says effectively screen them from view, but if we have a better place that references exactly what we want, I'd be fine with that.
I don't know where that would be.
I think in landscaping currently, we have some screening requirements. I don't know off the top of my head if we do in
I
this.
can
current-
just say, double check if this is defined anywhere.
It just might be easy. It might be nice to cross-reference if there's more detailed direction.
Yeah, get us a buffer if we can.
And then the only other things that I have in here for this section are just some call outs about what our current zone states, or what our current zoning states. So if you go back to, I think page 75, we're talking about side yards, front yards, and minimum rear. So side yard, I believe, is currently 35 feet. So this would shorten that up. Front yard is currently 40. So this puts it back further. And then the rear yard, I think, is currently 25.
Yeah, that's a big jump going from 25 to 40 in the rear yard,
Yeah, I thought so too.
especially since if it's up against a residential district, it jumped to 100.
Yeah, that was my next call out with distance from residential districts is 100 feet. That's pretty deep. That's pretty far. And the
Do I
question,
do,
I just didn't know if we thought that was appropriate. I don't know where that came from.
Light manufacturing the other day when we were talking about that was what, 40
I don't know.
for the setback? I think it was 40 because they were talking about the fence originally, and I said the fence doesn't count, but it would be to the building.
100 feet just seems excessive.
Yeah.
so do you want to do 40?
What's if we know what light manufacturing is for sure? Because it's listed in there.
Isn't it 20 right now?
Well, 25 is just the buffer.
Yeah.
You mean residential in there? It was 25.
I thought 15 was the buffer. Or maybe it's 25 with a 15, like with 15 of that being buffered.
I think
I
that's
think the
right.
buffer area was 25, but the setback to the building is 40.
I don't know, 40 feels 40 or 50. I mean, I think when you're looking at 100 and it's talking about no structure, service, or parking area shall be located less than 100 feet. I don't envision a parking area with proper screening being an issue. I envision a 3-story, 40-foot tall wall that is the outside of a distribution center being the call out. Right? Is that what everybody else is thinking?
I'm just trying to think, because really this would only apply or generally apply to the new enterprise zone. So anything that would go in there would be in there before anything residential would go around it. So these guys would be in first. 40 seems a little light, just in my opinion, but 100 seems a little too far.
What about 60?
So if you have when they do a parking lot there, I mean, what's a parking space size? 16 feet long. So you usually have you have a parking space or 2-lane road and then another parking space, then a sidewalk, a little grass, and then a building. So that's easily 40. That's more than 40.
I think so. I would be okay with 60 against a residential district.
I said, for me, it's the big exterior wall of a large distribution center. It's not the screened parking lot. It's not the small outbuilding that they may, keep a mower in or something. It's a big wall that you may have against it. But to your point, Ron, yes, you would think that if any residential were to go around it in any more substantial form than what's there right now, that the residential, you would have, garages in the back buffering it or larger rear yards buffering it as well.
I'm measuring that new nursing home right now just because that's what my Licking County auditor map came up to, is by my house. From the side of the nursing home to the nearest house, it's about 80.
So the nearest lot line or the nearest house structure?
To the nearest house, it was 70 to the nearest lot line.
Yeah. So 60 seems appropriate.
Yeah.
100 seems excessive, 40 seems light.
And what do you think about the side yard and the front yard depths? Not necessarily up against residential though. Did we change those?
Front yard, I don't think is a big deal. I mean, that's a difference. That's 40 feet. That's served us well so far. And side yards, 35 feet. Yeah. I just don't think we had anything on there about proximity. We don't have anything currently on the books right now about proximity to residential. Feels fine to me. And then the only other thing for this section that I had listed was just, is there anything about parking that we would want to add in here or not?
Maybe try to keep parking in the rear.
The only thing that we have in our current light manufacturing for parking is parking areas shall be at least 15 feet from the street right of way.
We want to keep parking on the side or the rear of the building.
I think we have that in the design guidelines, don't we?
Do we? I was going to say, I think it is. I knew we talked a lot about that somewhere, trying to keep all parking in the rear, but
Yeah, I think we're trying to keep it away from being front.
definitely a better look.
Bailey, that section is 115903A3. Those are all the callouts that I had.
Oh, they're under fire hydrants on 77. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but it says lots of greater than 2.5 acres shall contain a fire hydrant plan. Why do we cut off at 2.5?
I'm not sure. I think that was fire department. I don't know where that came from. I have to be honest.
That's pulled out of our current code.
Okay.
I asked to add that in the last revision of this document. Just because it wasn't listed currently and it was in our current code. So again, I assumed that there was some reason for it. Should we reach back out and ask what the reason is? And if it needs to change, we probably can, but I just wanted it included because it's in our current code.
Probably something to do with if it's under that size, they figure the building is small enough. If they, worst case scenario, they can show up with a truck full of water or something like that. I don't know, but that, or maybe there's already fire hydrants usually there on lots smaller than that.
Anything else in this chapter?
Nope, nothing in there. We'll go ahead and move on to special use district.
Actually, you guys already did that, so unless you have any comments, we can move on to 28.
I'll do that.
PUDs.
Our favorite.
I've got a bunch of examples we talked about, but those might be better in person than trying to share them online on a virtual setting.
I think that's why we pushed this back in the first place, wasn't it? We wanted to do this in person.
Yeah, I couldn't remember why we pushed it back. I thought maybe you guys just wanted more time.
I think it was because, well, we wanted more time, but I think it was because we wanted to do it in person.
Well,
Okay.
I don't think we're going to get through it all tonight.
Live.
So as far as I know, which don't take me at my word, I'll check again tomorrow, but as far as I know, we don't have any applications for the next meeting yet. Now, 2 weeks is technically next Tuesday, so between today and next Tuesday, we could get an application, but we'll probably have time to run through PUD at the next meeting if you guys, I'll make sure that I just put PUD on there, no other zoning chapters.
Yeah, we can start going through it tonight, and then Ron, can you email us those examples?
They're huge. If I send out a Dropbox link or a Google Drive link, would that work?
Or, yeah, Dropbox is fine.
I've got hard copies that I save that I can pass out for people to see too. Because I save everything. I don't throw anything away, apparently.
How do you keep it organized?
I don't know.
Yeah, and if you have hard copies that you want us to make copies of, we can do that. And Ron, if you have links and you want me to put them in a Dropbox folder, let me know and I can do that too.
All right.
Ron, this is the previous PUD packet that I have.
That was a while ago too. That was like 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't it?
About 4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
But in here, yeah, like what you have, you've got examples of different layouts and things like that. Up in Powell and Delaware, Orange counties. So I can bring them in, Bailey, if you want to make copies of them so you can have them for next time, because I got to drop off a couple things anyway.
Okay.
All right, so what changes did we have for this?
You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I guess with this section, I don't think we should have any map associated with it, in my opinion. Because to me, I think the PUD is an exception to our current zoning, and it's up to the applicant to be able to tell us why one of our current zoning districts are not representative of what they want to develop. And so it's almost like it's an amendment, I think is the way that we call it, to our zoning. So that would be my first suggestion.
I agree with that. I think the only ones that are on the zoning now are the existing PUDs.
Right. I think that was some of the confusion too, because if you look on our current map, we've got areas over there near the Enterprise Center that are listed as PUD. You know, the whole area back there by Concord Crossing is listed as PUD, where that may have been what it was entered into as. But Bailey, after the PUD is developed, how do we define that specific area? Is it parcel by parcel based off of its most closely related zoning district?
I actually think that that might be light manufacturing. Didn't somebody rezone all that to light manufacturing?
What I'm specifically talking about here is Concord.
Oh, okay.
But there are spaces over here where, over by the Enterprise Center. where
Yeah,
think
I don't think that that's all right. I think,
No, this is a 4-year-old map,
yeah.
but specifically for like Concord East. For those parcels that were developed in Concord East, that project is now completed under the PUD guidance. How do we categorize those, and under what zoning code are those parcels enforced? Is it the most closely related to how it's defined? So there's a lot of, SR1 or UR1 over there. Or...
Yeah, well, they should be enforced based on the developers agreement. But right now, I believe that they're enforced by either UR1 or SR2, I think.
Okay, that's what I thought they were in that ballpark. So yeah, I think it's something that the developer would need to tell us why. Let's see here. Areas of discussion. So if you're looking at 29.04, and you're looking at, or 2804, I think, yeah. Minimum of 20 acres. And I'm just throwing this out there because I don't know what the right number is. Is 20 acres the right number?
I think that's up to you guys.
Open question.
Well, how many acres off of Benedict, that new one that was trying to go in over there? How many acres was that going to be?
I can't remember. I do want you to keep in mind the cost of what a PUD district would be. When I first took this document over, it was a minimum of 5 acres, which I think is too small. The cost of developing a PUD on 5 acres, I just don't think that you're going to get the product and the quality of the development that we want out of a minimum of 5 acres. So I do think that we should think about that.
I wouldn't go less than 20 at all. Otherwise, it gets into some more spot zoning. It tries to do a 5-acre PUD. But then, are you thinking 20 is too small? Because chances are this would be something that would be annexed into the village.
Oh, I was putting out the question just to put out the question. I think the acreage over there by 62, Ryan, that you were talking about, was about 5.5 acres in total, 3 different parcels, if I'm not mistaken. So it wasn't too terribly big. But yeah, to Bailey's point, it's going to be something that's going to be pretty substantial. I don't think recently any of the PUD developments we've been approached have been, they've been far greater than 20 acres. But yeah, I just wanted to put it out there to Ryan's point from before about something that something to think about, because the note that I have down here, Ron, is exactly to your point. It shouldn't be anything less than 20 acres. Yeah. I would agree.
The Rice property and the Michelson property were both about 80 some acres.
Yeah, they were huge.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of places in town where they've come in with a neighborhood. I know like those condos off Concord, that's 12 acres roughly over there. But yeah, the cost of it is prohibitive to what you're going to do.
20 feels good to me.
Yeah.
And the next section that is probably going to take some time to talk through, 28.05, open space. So this was a big topic that was discussed a lot. Ron, as you can probably remember, the amount of open space to assign to a PUD. versions that I have it as high as 50%. And that is in direct respect to affect the density of what could potentially go in to a particular area. But at the end of the day, regardless of what number we land on, what I continue to call out to these developers is that open space can be a number and it can be a metric of what you're trying to present, but the open space needs to be usable. And I think it's listed here, common open space and or recreational facility. We're making sure it's usable and it's accessible. And I think we have that in our design guidelines as well for open spaces, but maybe reinforce it in this section as well to specifically state explicitly usable and accessible. Because in discussions that we had in the open meetings with the Concord East development, I'm not sure with the blueprints that we were shown on that platting presentation, whether some of those areas were usable and or accessible. So
Yeah, he was just putting the garbage land in as his open space.
And that's not open to me. I mean, that's not developed. I'll give them that. That's not developed, but it's not usable or open. If it's a floodplain, that's a marsh or, something like that. So I think we've got to define what we mean by open space, number one.
Right. It defines it a little bit when it says public utility and similar easements, rights of way,
right.
Water courses or similar channels are not acceptable for open space.
Yes. So then the question is, what is that number? What is it? Is it 45% or is it something smaller? I don't think it's any higher than 45%. But I also think 45% may be a little high.
45% of usable open space might be high. If we don't consider like retention ponds open space or wetlands open space, then 45% might be high. Unless we want to say 20% of that 45% has to be usable, like parks, because obviously retention ponds aren't usable. They have to be there, but they're not usable.
That's exactly the number that I was at. Is 50% of the open space be usable?
You could argue a pond could be usable though if you're going to fish in it.
If you're going to make a pond that's like 10 acres or something.
No, but I'm saying I
don't know. For me, it's active recreation. It's a footpath. It's a soccer field. It's a playground. It's something like that.
Right.
So that's exactly what Bailey said is what I was thinking. Is it 45%, but half of that needs to be usable.
Yeah. And on that same section under B on the next page, it says that part of the open space, I would take out the part where it says it can be a site for schools, because if once a school goes in there, it's really not an open space anymore.
Right.
I believe in this code, there's a section toward the end that talks about, it mentions impact fees, I believe. And it mentions impact fees for large developments like this and in-kind contribution. And we got hung up on that a little bit as well, as what is in-kind contribution? And is it land that you donate as a part of it to a school if it's a large, development that's being put in to help mitigate, costs associated with growth. We're talking more dollar amount, but I think that's something that the school site piece is something that is addressed later on in this draft. So I would agree with taking that out of here.
Did you mention in-kind contributions in lieu of open space? If you give us X amount of dollars for a public works project, you can get rid of some open space.
I don't want to sacrifice the open space for dollars. Let me just make that update here. Okay. Let's see here. I already talked about that. 29.28.08. Residential density and design criteria. It says the maximum density should be 3 dwellings per acre, which is kind of our, do we want a maximum density, or would a minimum, or leave it open?
Yeah, I think you want a maximum. I think 3 would be fine there. I mean, a quarter or 4, because 4 would be a quarter acre lot, but I know you want more green space. So I think 3 is fine.
One of the things Jim was talking about is in a conservation development where they can pack all the houses into one area and then have a large open area for a conservation easement area. And then you could get more development in one area, more houses on smaller lots there, and leave us a big open area.
So but the units per acre is taken on the entirety of the
Yeah,
project.
it's a gross number.
Yeah.
That I would be, are you thinking going down to 4 per acre, a quarter acre? I'm sorry, 4 per acre. Or you want to keep it at 3?
I don't know.
4 is as large as I would want to see that. I think 3 is fine. Because I know we want more open space.
I mean, 3 gives you a larger lot.
Right.
4, you're down to a quarter acre lot, which is probably in line with most of the village, to be honest with you. UR1, right?
Probably more in line with Concord Crossing there. I know that behind Tractor Supply there, those are, I mean, only the corner lots are about a quarter of an acre. Most of the lots are less than that.
But if they wanted to do a 5th or a 6 acre lot, then they could do it in a conservation type easement. So I'm okay with keeping with the 3 acre, or 3 per acre.
You don't think it's too big?
No.
I mean, part of
like
is it's able to be negotiated somewhat, but so I mean, if they really want to push for it, there's some give and take somewhere else probably. But
I think once it's codified, I don't think it's, unless you have a variance.
Well, that's what
you have to think if you have a quarter acre lot with our setbacks, you don't have much yard. So like usable yard, let me rephrase that, unless you use your front yard.
Yeah.
Right, like I have a quarter acre and I have a nice yard because my house sits 10 feet from the road.
Right.
Right. But if my house is in the middle of my yard, I would basically not really have a yard. So I'd say you'd go to like stick with like a rural theme, you would stick with a little bit larger lot. Keeps our character.
Yeah.
And it's more desirable to have a larger lot than it is a little tiny guy.
No, I was mistaken. Most of these lots here in town are quarter to a third. So 3 to 4 is in that range. So 3 would definitely put it on the larger side.
I don't think anyone would complain about that.
No.
That's fair.
No one wants to see the house where you can reach out and touch the other one.
Right. And I mean,
open both your windows and have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like at normal speaking level.
Small as you'd want to get.
In one of the packets that I have here, there was, you're looking at how these developments are designed. We had a lengthy conversation too about having an access road. So you've got your main road, and we'll just use Concord as an example. You've got Concord, and then you've got an entrance, and you've got a buffer, and then you've got your main roads throughout the development. And the call out there is if you go down Morse Road, there's a lot of those developments in New Albany that have that large buffer in the front that buffer those houses from the main street that pulls out then on the collector and arterial and all that stuff.
Yeah, to preserve too.
Yeah, is that a type of design that we would want to promote? Because in a previous version, Jim actually pulled up a picture, an illustration to show that. I don't know if everybody can see that or not.
Yeah.
So just a
Yeah, you
thought.
have that at, yeah, you have that at Fenway. You have that at the Preserve, which is on Hamilton, but the same deal. West Albany, which is off Old Dublin Granville Road. That way you don't have a corner house sitting right in the front.
Yeah.
It's got an entry into it, and then you actually enter the developed area after a green space. I think that's a good idea to have that in there.
I think it's good off of a busier road too. I mean, maybe if they went off of Caswell or they were going off of Edwards or something, I don't know that you necessarily need it, but you definitely would need that off of a busier road.
62, yeah.
Bailey, that's in an older version here that I can try and find a way to make a copy and get to you if you wanted to include something like that, or if you know what I'm talking about.
I don't. If you just like put a Post-it note on that when you come into the office, I'll just scan it.
Yeah.
Should we have something in there about multiple ingress and egress? You can't just do one, you got to have two.
Well, and that's where I think these would be listed here under 2808 residential design, density and design criteria to make sure that these are all met under 2808. So yeah, I think that's a valid call out because that's what we've called out to.
That seems to come up in conversation quite a bit.
Yeah. Is it going to depend on the land size and how many units it is? Because if you're at 20 acres, you got 3 per, but yeah, it's only 60 houses, but you're losing houses because you have green space, so you wouldn't have a very big development back there.
That's
so
a
it'd
good
have to be like, you'd probably want to base it off of a number of units, because like Concord Crossing probably isn't that big of a problem now, but if you add a secondary addition on the back of that, now it is, because you like absolutely add, you add another 80, 90 houses. Because do they have a problem with the Pulte? Really? And there's quite a bit of houses there. I mean, they should probably have 2.
They do have 2.
Pulte has 2.
Yeah. Like a neighborhood that size needs 2, but like if you only did 40 houses, 35 houses, do you need a secondary entrance?
I think that's fair. You put a metric down there for number of single family, or number of residences, because then really the reason why you're talking about the ingress and egress is because the amount of trips, the amount of traffic, and it's not necessarily single family, it's just residences, which could equate to apartment buildings unless you had a mobility hub that was close, in which case you wouldn't need all of that traffic.
Do we want to say 60 is the
yeah, because it would coincide with the around 20 acres. It'd be like 35 acres probably.
Yeah,
so like a neighborhood like the Goat in New Albany, like they had to put the second egress in when they added the houses because they had too much. They actually have 3. They put a 3rd one in when they added the houses because they got too dense and they couldn't get everybody through.
Anyone know how many houses are off Khyber Run Circle there?
Quite a few. It probably gets clustered because Redwood's there too.
Yeah, I'm counting them right now. There's about, just the outer ring there's about 35. So yeah, I think if you capped it at like 60, maybe 75 houses, over 60 or over 75, I think you need 2 entrances. But Khyber Run got by for a long time with just 1 there. And so did the other neighborhood on Concord.
In the PUD, can they come to us with like condos and houses or just houses?
Yeah,
they can come
can
to
do
us
it.
with anything.
They could even
So yeah, I would probably do it by like, because you have single, it just has I would do it by like land mass. Because if you do it by single family homes, then it might not pertain. If they like try to do like 2 apartment buildings with like some sort of condo, like they did like a goat, a smaller version of the goat.
So do you want to say 30 acres?
I don't
Mhm.
know. I think it's more in living spaces because it's the amount of cars that's in there.
Yeah, but the acreage is gonna dictate how much you can get in there anyways.
What if you just say 2 or more entry exit points required unless approved by planning and zoning?
That works.
That's what the PUD, I mean, it's all part of the negotiation process with them.
I think
It's gonna be quite
PUDs
specific.
start out as what we're writing here, but by the end of it, you have 15 variances in there.
For the one right before that, for stormwater management, it's all designed as retention ponds. The note that I have is that, are we just pretty much saying at this point that we just want dry basins? We don't want detention ponds as a part of a stormwater management plan?
I would be fine with either. I mean, the retention.
Yeah,
The
I
retention
think they
ponds
look better.
in dry space, they end up being a mosquito haven anyway.
So do you want me
I
to
think
take
wet
that out?
pond,
I would take it out.
yeah, because wet ponds look better in a neighborhood. You have
Yeah,
like Highland Lakes,
Yeah,
all
There's a-
wet, they all filter.
And you can
Into
treat
each
them
other.
and keep the water moving and less mosquito action than a mini swamp over there.
Yeah, because Highland Lakes has like 4 that drain into each other.
I love Highland Lakes.
That's
Uh,
also one of those mixed neighborhoods where there's multiple different kinds of housing in it.
Wait, retention ponds are wet ponds.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do, depending on what their land looks like, they could do a dry pond too, but
Because detention
I got it mixed
ponds
up.
end up being a swamp.
I got it mixed up. At the end of the day, I think my call out is just that we have a stormwater management plan on the books. When this originally was created, we didn't. And so I would more so default to the MS3 guidelines than to have something counter in here.
Okay. Yeah, they'll be required to submit stormwater management plans, so.
Um, the other call outs here for me are really about the process. I don't know if anybody had any other call outs about the actual substance.
The only other one I had was 2809 private roads. Are we going to allow that? It seems kind of it could be a dangerous area if when the owners are required to keep upkeep on their roads. Is there a reason why we have that in there?
Right now, we allow people to have private roads if they want to.
I mean, the condos over there in Leafydale are a private road.
They're just not allowed to use private, you can see that in C. They're not allowed to use to have a road that goes through to somewhere be private. So, you know, if it could be used to go from a road to a major road to a major road, it has to be public.
Okay, so I guess I see now, if we have a multifamily element in your PUD, it could have its own private.
Yeah,
circulation.
so basically, we said 2 or more automobile entry exit points required unless approved by planning and zoning. Those would have to be public.
Yeah.
Unless you guys approved only 1 entrance and exit, and then you would also approve the private roads.
Okay, that makes sense. Go ahead, Ben, you want to do your process?
Yeah. So contents of application 28.12. Let me get to the right spot here. Um, So what I have here under a name, address, phone number of applicant, I think it would also be beneficial within the preliminary development plan to have information of the surveyor, the engineer, and people like that that we have in our current code. The reference for that is 1179.01B.
So the name of the surveyor,
Currently, we have name, address, and phone number of registered surveyor, engineer, urban planner, and/or attorney assisting in the preparation of the preliminary development plan. I just think it would be nice to have that stuff as well.
They usually put their they have like a license. They usually put that on their pins. Well, the flags that they put out anyway.
We could even ask for email too.
what does it say, Ben?
Registered surveyor, engineer, urban planner, and/or attorney assisting in the preparation of the preliminary development plan. And then in this section, I think we should add in, again, what we have in our current code, which is 117901K. And I'll just give you that, Bailey, if you just want to add it in here somewhere. It's just a copy and paste. But it could be item J for us or somewhere mixed in here. I don't know. But it states a written statement by the applicant setting forth the reasons why, in his or her opinion, the PUD would be in the public interest and would be consistent with the village's statement of objectives and purposes for the PUD, which to me is key for the PUD, and the applicant being in the position to tell us why PUD and not our current zoning. 1179.01K. A question that I have too listed here for item 7, right above. This preliminary plan that we have listed in here, we don't have this requirement currently, do we?
No,
Is there a reason why we can't add this to our requirements for preliminary currently, since it'll be in the future?
no.
What do you guys think of suggesting putting this forth to add into our current code in the interim? Which is item number 7 here, just having a preliminary plan for water, sewer, storm drainage, and other utility systems.
I think it'd be good. I mean, we're gonna ask for it anyway.
I mean, preliminary in my mind is just at least the plan to say that you've thought about more than just where you're gonna put the houses and how much money you're gonna make.
There's some cost involved in that, so I mean, they're gonna have some buy-in, right out of the gate. There's cost involved in getting that plan done.
It would at least help us.
I think initially we want to see a plat. I think before we approve, we'd want to see the water, sewer, and drainage, but I think asking them to provide the engineering at the very beginning of the process, because it's a negotiation where we ask them to change stuff quite a bit. And that's really going to be an excessive cost. I think if we make them come in with their engineering all ready to go, we could say they have to have that stuff ready to go before we move forward to recommend the village council to approve it.
And we do, we have it in that middle ground. It needs to be provided between the preliminary plat approval and the final.
Final.
But is there anything that we can get ahead of time that would be in that same
To
vein?
be honest with you, we require that the landowners send their own their own engineer out to locate all of the utilities. And normally they don't want to put that payment, normally they don't want to put that money into it for the preliminary plan because they want to just include it with everything. Although we are starting to put all of our water, sewer, and storm lines on GIS, so we'll have those located, within the next year. But as of right now, we require people to go out and locate them themselves.
So back to Ben's point, in speaking with my counsel over here, who's easily more qualified than I am, because she's a designer at an architecture firm. She said that's pretty common. They have that stuff up front all the time. People ask for it. So it's common in other places.
I would definitely ask for grading, because I think a grading plan would be important. And if we say it's a preliminary storm, sewer and storm layout, I guess I'd be okay with that. Like I said, in a PUD, you go through a lot of changes. And
yeah,
that's all I'm looking for, is just show me you put a little bit more thought into this besides just where you're going to put the houses,
the survey,
where you're going to put the street, where the ingress and egress is. And I don't know if I'm really going out on a limb, but stormwater management is a very heavy topic. And I think it's the question that is asked maybe the most often when we're looking at any new house that's being built is, where's the stormwater runoff? Where are the catches? Where are the basins? What's going to happen? So for a new development coming in that's going to be bigger than 20 acres, I just want to see something. Just show me something. I mean, I don't know if you necessarily hold somebody's feet to it, at the end of the day, but show me that you give them some thought into it, and then we can negotiate around it. But
sounds like it's a fairly common request for other municipalities, and I think it's fine because it's going to require them to buy in a little bit. They're not just going to show up, try to press us for what they can press us for. They're going to show up and have to buy in a little bit.
yeah, I don't know if it has to be, 100% professionally rendered to the end of the day, hold your feet to it, but it just show us something. To that end, if you're aligned to it, I would still like to see this piece brought into our current code in the interim. Ron, you still seem hesitant.
I'm just thinking of the cost on something like that, especially if they come in and say, we have this idea for a multifamily, single family development on 60 acres. And they're kind of floating a balloon to us and saying what our thoughts are. And there's a negotiation back and forth. Even a preliminary set of engineering plans for a development that size is going to be 40, 50 grand.
Really?
Yeah, they're not cheap. And I wonder if they would basically tell us, no, thank you. Now, if we could come in with something preliminary and say, here's our plat, here's kind of what we're thinking, and we're saying, okay, let's see what it looks like if you do this. And once we get to a point where we're somewhat close, then we say, okay, we need to see some engineering here to show how you're going to handle stormwater, utilities, egress, and all that.
I'll just tell you that in my experience in the past 2 PUD inquiries that we've gotten since I've been here, one has had preliminary water and sewer and one has not. Now, neither one of those obviously got off the ground, but just preliminarily coming to staff, one has had them and one hasn't.
So I don't know.
I just hate to have them put so much effort into something and us to come back and say, okay, we want a lot of changes, and they just pull their hair out saying, we've got to re-engineer all this. I wonder if there's some kind of compromise in the middle saying, well, we need to see something.
Honestly, even without PUD, it happens a lot. Like with Pulte, Jack and I have been through multiple meetings with Pulte and our village engineer telling them that they need to change things, that they need to move water lines or they need to move sewer lines, or the engineer realizes that it's not going to work and they need to realign it. So it's not unusual to go through changes. Everybody sort of knows that it's going to go through multiple reviews and multiple changes.
We're job creators anyway, so that's going to create a job for some nice engineering kid.
Get the engineer there.
Well, honestly, it's going to be put back on the homeowner, on the person buying the home.
Yeah. Well, let's put it in and see. And let's see if we get pushback from it at all. And they're saying I mean, I would love to see it. I just wonder if we're putting a very heavy burden on someone coming in with a PUD. But if somebody's coming in with 60-acre PUD, they're going to have deep pockets. Hopefully they would have their own engineering staff.
And I really think that even though it's called a preliminary plan, by the time a developer brings us a preliminary PUD plan, they have an engineer on staff. They have started to pay them. So, you know, it's preliminary, but they've already started doing the work that they'll need to do.
Yeah.
Of those two plans, Bailey, that you mentioned, which one did you feel was more prepared?
The one that had the stormwater. They had already come to me and Jack before they came to council, and that they knew exactly, you know, what's already on the property. What do we have to get to the property? Where's the nearest lift station? So they had already done, you know, all of that research before they were even ready to submit a preliminary plan. Not that they ever got that far, but
I just, as big of a subject as it is with water, sewer, stormwater management, you know, and the drainage of it, I just think if we're entertaining these types of plats for these large parcels, which we've got the land around to do it, that we need somebody who's coming in prepared and giving us everything that we need to talk about. Because I think for a lot of these discussions, it's hard for people on council, on commission, and in the public to wrap their heads around how something can be approved without having an idea of how these other pieces are going to be managed. I just think it's hard.
I'll go with it.
So I would ask, I don't know if we want to do a motion and a vote, but to put something like this together, to have it in front of council at the next meeting.
at the next meeting, or do you want me to put an ordinance together for you guys to vote on at your next meeting?
I think if we're just taking this wording and putting it into an ordinance, we can probably just pass it on.
Okay, I can have that ready to go by Friday if you want.
What do you guys think?
I'm good with it. I mean, it's buy-in at the end of the day. Harrison Township, when I just dealt with that neighborhood I was trying to get through over there, I mean, they made me have some stuff like this. So I don't think it's
can you make a motion and a vote just to recommend it to council, and then I can include that in the ordinance.
And this is to put it in and clarify, what are we doing?
We're adding this number 7 into our current planning and zoning for preliminary plats.
Water, sewer, storm, and other utility systems, as well as.
So this will go under 117902B. And it'll probably end up being number 8. John, do you have any feedback or any comments?
I missed part of that. It was cutting out. Not what you just said, but before that.
We're just talking about adding in the verbiage here in our proposed zoning code to our current zoning code now, just in the interim, which is asking for a preliminary plan for water, sewer, storm drainage, and other utility systems to be included in the preliminary plat application for PUDs.
Yeah, I like it until this is done.
Yeah.
Because I think it gives us more, the more information we have, the better.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion to include this section in 28.12, now I7, Bailey, I think you've got notes on it, into our current planning and zoning code 1179.02B, and have it prepared for council at their next meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second. Roll call on it.
Teresa on here?
Yeah, I am. I didn't know if you were going to do a roll call or, okay. Ryan Green,
Yes.
Ron Dane,
No.
Ben Lee,
Yes.
John Merriman,
Yes.
All right. Are you against it because of the timing, Ron, or just because of the thought, just the idea? The dollar?
I'm still concerned by it, but I thought it would pass, so I had to put my no in.
That's fair. I just didn't know if you felt like you wanted more time to review it, that's all. Okay. Let's see. 28.14. Currently, it's within 30 days. We have this listed within 35 days. It gives us more time, but just wanted to call that out. And then in here as well, I think these are some recent ads that I would like to see moved into this. 1179.02C in our current code talks about this being a recommendation from planning and zoning to council. And I want to make sure that those specific words are added into this version as well. So 1179.02C reads, just so everybody knows, the commission will provide its recommendation to council within 30 days of action. Unless otherwise requested by the applicant, council will schedule a public hearing. And it goes on, but all it is just talking about this not being the final vote, but it going as a recommendation to council. And that was passed in 2019. So Bailey, if you could just make a note to add that in, that would be sufficient. And then I think there are just some differences here in the criteria for recommendation. Looking at 28.15. So this is the criteria for recommendation for the preliminary plat. Is that right? Yeah. So I think there are some pieces that are missing from our current code that may be beneficial in here as well. I can go through them. I can just give you the numbers. It may be a little confusing. I just don't know how you guys want to approach this. Are you able to bring up a different screen, Bailey, and maybe look at our current code? Or if you guys want to call it a day, I don't know, whatever anybody wants to do.
We can go through it.
Emma. All right, come here.
Sorry, it seems to be taking a little while here. I don't know why.
I guess for me, just looking at 28.15, there didn't seem to be a ton of detail as there is in our current recommendation.
I can update it with what our current wording says.
That may be the easiest thing because that criteria makes sense to me.
What number is that?
1179.02 B.
Okay.
Just ask our standard questions we ask like in a variance.
I mean, more or less, that's pretty much the case. I don't know if it's in here or not, but it's, you know, is it proposed like C on here? Any proposed commercial development can be justified at the proposed location. And that's probably with a mixed use type of development where maybe you've got commercial in the front and you've got residential in the back. I don't know if that's something that we have in our current list that may be beneficial to add into our current list as we try and promote more mixed use. So I think if anything, we add C to our list. But I think, yeah, everything else is pretty much defined as we have it already. Are you guys okay with that?
I think so.
And maybe we can come back to this later. I guess for the final that I would want to make sure as well, final development plan 28.17. We've got it listed as 12 months. So they've got 1 year from the preliminary approval to submit the final. Do we think that's enough time? What is our
We'll
current?
come back and ask for an extension.
Is 12 months our current plan? Does anybody know?
I think it is.
Well, if that's the case, that's fine. We're just calling out the numbers.
So after 12 months, you're saying if they don't build at all, we can just shut it down?
Yeah,
I think you have to, after 12 months, you have to submit the final development plan, which has all of the narrative and the architectural styles.
Yeah.
Okay. So then they have to come back to the commission after that.
Yeah, and then I think that just puts it on us to say yes or no, you know, if things have changed over the last 12 months or what have you. Let's see here.
We've got 60 days to approve the final, or recommend, I'm sorry, the final. And then they can ask for an extension of 2 years.
Yeah, currently we're at 2.5, so this cuts 6 months off of it.
Okay.
The only other thing that I would add into this too is that we've got criteria for final approval. We don't have that, I don't think, in here. We don't have any criteria for final approval. We've got lists of what could be included, what could be asked for, but I think we need to have criteria listed. We have that in 1179.04. And again, if you know we want to add that stuff in, I think that would make sense. But I would also add to it, or just make sure, because in 1179.04, it has that all the information required in the preliminary plan was, was updated. Anything that needed to be satisfied from the preliminary approval should be.
Yeah, we could almost change the wording on 2815 to say, before we make a recommendation for preliminary and final, these are the questions that need to be answered.
So you're saying use the same criteria for both the preliminary and the final?
I'll at least have the same questions set up. That way we don't have to repeat the whole section again for final. Because I think they would be, most of them would still be apropos.
I think in the final development plan, at least how it's set up in ours currently, is that you've got landscaping plans, you've got, I'm sorry, that's what is included. It talks about lighting, it talks about signage, it talks about, efficient pedestrian and vehicular circulation.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it would be better to have a second set of questions that are more specific, because once they've answered the first set in 2815, then we don't need to ask them again. It'd be a better recommendation.
Yeah. It talks about, you get a final stormwater drainage plan at that point and stuff like that. 1179.06 is where that's from. I'm sorry. I think I quoted the wrong section last time. So I would just make sure those two sections are final, that they're different enough that the final includes all of the specifics and the preliminary just gives, some of those requirements as it may be leading into a final approval.
Yeah, I agree.
The only other question that I have here, and then I'm done, is in that 28.15 at the end of all the lists, it talks about, I think we have the same call out in our code, that the commission may seek the assistance and input of outside consultants or experts, and the cost of those services will be the responsibility of the applicant. Is that normal process?
That's what we do when we have our engineer review everything.
Okay, so it's more related to the engineer approval.
Yeah, we tell every time anybody needs anything reviewed by the engineer, they pay for that.
And the cost for that is, the billing for that happens after the fact, right?
Yeah, so what happens is the applicant sends in, let's just say it's a single family housing development. They would send us their plans. We would send them to the engineer, the plans. The engineer would get back to us with a cost for that review. And then we'd go back to the applicant and say, here's how much your review will cost. You need to send us a check. And we will not have the engineer review the plans until we get that money.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. Those are all the call outs I had. I don't know if we wanted to review this first thing at the next meeting, just to go over it again with the changes.
We'll definitely take a look at the PUD a little bit in the next meeting, with Ron's examples and stuff. We'll take a look, but
The next, on the 6th.
No, the next one is on the 13th.
Okay.
Council's on the 6th.
Got it.
So we just had PUD on for that, or are we looking at maybe another section if we get through it quicker?
What's next?
We're moving on from the zoning districts. So yeah, we could probably include general development standards if you guys get through PUD fast enough.
yeah.
We can almost probably even go into 30 and 31, because the 31 is relatively, we've been through that recently. Well, maybe not. At least 30 though. Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else from anybody?
I've got 2 items for other business, but I'll wait.
So I did say this at the beginning of the meeting, but John wasn't on yet. As of July 1st, we need to be all in person again for all of our public meetings. We will no longer be having a virtual format for participation. So if someone could share that with Jesse when they see him as well, you guys will all need to be present in person or you won't be counted as present. And we'll still stream to YouTube, but we just won't accept any virtual participation.
All right. Other business. Go ahead, Ben.
2 questions that I've been asked here recently. Property maintenance, stuff that Jim Blair does. It was brought up a year or so ago, I think, maybe at this point, maybe longer. We are using that form that we talked about. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then there have been several conversations about it too, and I was asked about it as well with respect to new businesses coming into the village, and maybe there's a change use for a particular building, and the types of questions that maybe a business owner needs to ask, and who they need to reach out to, be it the county, be it the fire department, be it the village. There's a flow planning document that I was given, a flow chart for new businesses. Are you familiar with this, Bailey?
Yeah, we've been given that as well.
Okay, is that something that we can look to incorporate or look to add into what we're doing?
We can hand it out to people. I think the fire department thinks that we aren't telling people that they might need to go to Licking County, which we are telling people, but we're just not, we just tell them call Licking County. And then if they don't call Licking County, we have no way of enforcing, you need to call Licking County.
Sure.
So yeah, we can hand out the flow chart, which we are planning to do. It's just that beyond that, we're really not sure what our enforcement responsibility is there, because it's not like they can go to Licking County before they come to us and we can say, well, you have to have a Licking County permit before you get a permit from us, because Licking County does that. They have to have our permit before they can get a permit from Licking County. So we try to keep on top of things as much as we can. Unfortunately, people slip through the cracks.
Sure. And I was called out about this, and I think it's a good idea, because the more information that we can give the new businesses moving in, I think the better on the front end.
Yeah.
To help as much as we can. But yeah, to your point, in terms of enforcing it, I think as long as they pass along the information, that may be all that we can do at the end of the day. From what I've been told, the document's been passed off, obviously before you came on in your current position, but it's been passed off quite a few times over the last, looks to be decade. I don't know how much it's been incorporated or changed or what have you, but yeah, if we can utilize this and pass it off and continue to help answer those questions and stave off any missteps, I think that would be great. I just wasn't sure how much anybody knew about it or had been asked about it, or I think
we're planning on
to you a couple of weeks ago, but we haven't talked about it since then.
We're planning on handing it out to new businesses. Another thing that's actually happened to us in the past couple of weeks is that, and I don't know why people think that they don't need permits for these things, but we've noticed a couple businesses that have opened and have no permits and have not said anything to the village, and they just opened. So we are on top of those as well. I believe all of them now have applied for zoning permits and all of that stuff. But we had to drive around and go find out that they were open before we ever realized that they were there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sometimes it's just you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I want to just follow up on that because I just hadn't had a chance to ask you outside of sending the email over. So I appreciate it. That's all I had.
All right. Well, make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. There we have it. Catch you guys never online again, hopefully. I guess.
Person time.
Have a good one, guys.
All right, thanks, guys.
Bye.